Should I like put pants on just in case or something?
No, 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 no. I don't care. This is
No?
part of it.
Okay.
So obviously, we're very focused around multiplayer and multiplayer workflows. I guess in new BC, how has it evolved from old BC in terms of like MIDI, drum machine, and audio?
There's always going to be another new VC. You know how it is. Things change. For anyone who's listening or watching this, we used to be a plugin. We used to be a sampler. You know, we used to be butter. We turned into margarine. Went back to butter. It was more authentic. But the point is, we just learn every time we try something, and it gets better every time, which is fun to see. We could see people having a better time making music together. I think it's awesome, Michael, that you and Maya and Hugo, you know, the marketing team, and you know, mine, Hugo in particular, have never made beats before, but they can hop on with you in a session and you can actually get somewhere. That's an accomplishment, you know, like that was a lot of work to make it to that point. Are you guys making the next, you know, DJ Khaled album? No, you are not. But you are moving forward. You're making, you know, 1-minute beats that are actually sounding pretty fresh. It's fun to see. There's a lot more evolution to come.
Is the focus still on making a workflow that's simple, fast, and easy to use, or is it more to try and see how deep you can go within a certain project?
You know, I think we did make a workflow that's simple, fun, and easy to use. Like, I think a lot of the work that we've done has been on the overall kind of, okay, let's make sure there's not too many windows, you know, that you could see your plugins down at the bottom. We've tried to find the best that we can see in all of the other DAWs and inspire ourselves from there. Look for workflows that people feel is comfortable having, you know, the collection on the right as well too. I think overall the flows are pretty good, and I think we just want to add just a bit more flexibility to some of the stuff that's there, just so that you can go a little bit further. You know, there's some small things that are missing that will be easy to add. You know, lots of people add fade-ins and fade outs to samples and the tracks and stuff like that. Having something in there, which is simple, I think it's just going to help you express yourself more creatively. So it's not necessarily about making it more complex. It's just maybe just adding a bit more flexibility to what we already have.
Okay, fair enough. And new BC has a new UI. Tell us some of the principles behind, you know, sort of redoing the entire UI of BC. From the old BC.
I mean, again, you say new and old BC, but keep in mind this is the 7th time we've done this, or 8th. It's pretty crazy, you know. Like we've done this so many times over the years, but the principle is really just observe, you know, observe and collect feedback and face the hard truths. You know, it's easy to kind of double think sometimes and pretend that things are good or pretend or get too attached to something that you've built. You know, just like how musicians can get really attached to their songs and sometimes they cannot even, which is why you need someone else to mix and master and to give you feedback. You can't even hear your own music. You can't even see the flaws of your own product that you're building because your eyes lock into what's good. You always click on the same things. You do things in an order which makes sense to you. But that's not the way other people use the product, you know? So you have to be willing to listen to what people say, observe them in a neutral setting, get unbiased opinions. Yet your opinion now, Michael, so biased, terribly biased, worthless, completely worthless.
Yeah, this is why I'm doing QA now instead of being properly involved. I think personally that new BC just allows for more of a. I mean, I feel like people are very visually oriented as well. So being able to help the marketing side of just making BC feel more approachable and more like, oh, I sort of recognize this, but it still looks fresh and new and different is really important. And speaking of that, so multiplayer cursors, we used to have like super neon cursors, and now we have vanilla cursors. Was there anything, did like Johan get annoyed or something like that? Like, how did that happen?
I take some creative liberties, as you know, sometimes, but I am trying to play ball. I think that before we go with too much of the flash, because I do tend to have a little bit too much fun with the Crayola crayons, you know, it's about usability and simplicity and just making sure that people understand what's happening. You know, BC is built in Unity. There's so many fun things that we can do. I mean, it's a game engine, right? Like any video game, whatever's happening in a video game, we can apply that to the DAW and just enjoy ourselves and have fun, you know. But the key with lots of these things is whenever they say whenever you do visual programming or any kind of effect, they're like, find an effect you like, hone it down by about halfway,
Mm.
and then it's probably 2 times as much as it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Point being, a little bit goes a long way. So
Mm.
I personally need to find my own balance with that whenever I'm playing with the lighting and the shaders and all those fancy things. But at the same time, there's still room to add a little bit of spice, here and there. But
Oh yeah.
one sec though, to stay on the cursors though, something that is important that I would like to do is to make them even more reflective of what's happening. Like for example, normally when you drag a file in, your little cursor turns into a hand, and you can see the file that you're dragging and that sort of stuff. You see the outline on the clip. That isn't reflected yet in multiplayer, but I would like to reflect that in multiplayer because a big design principle is to show intention. That's what I think makes our collab better than what you see in other PWs, is because understanding the intention of someone else is almost as important as understanding the action. And so every time we can show that intention or make it clear what someone is working on or why they're working on it, that just helps your collaborator organize themselves a little bit better. Like part of it is the system having rules coded into it, but part of it is making it clear so that people can figure out what it is that they want to do and work independently.
And how about so there's intention. How about expression using cursors? Like, can I get a Michael Jackson doing the moonwalk across the screen? Is that something that you feel would help their work?
You know what? You can, just move your cursor from the right to the left. And technically that's a moonwalk. Update your user profile. You're good to go. But I mean, if overall what you're asking for is, can we be silly and have fun and have vanity and just like the way games do, like eventually, yeah. But whenever I hear anyone use BC, they're not, like, they think of stuff like that, but then they say, oh, I stopped because I was getting annoyed that the MIDI piano roll didn't go up 7 octaves, or that I couldn't close the panel by hitting escape. And there's these, just before we were recording, we're talking about it. There's just a plethora of things, little things. They're not sexy. We just need to clean our room, and before we can actually start picturing what all that other stuff is on. So that's really the focus right now, just making sure that people can show up, experience what's actually already there, and have a really good time.
And so part of that experience, one of the features that was added that's like completely new is the parts. So how did you initially come up with parts and the purpose between parts and multiplayer?
I was thinking about couch co-op games and how often in these games, like some adventure game or whatever it is, Castle Crashers, everyone can kind of run around and do their own thing on the same interface. But at the same time, my character has a backpack and an inventory that only I can access and I can kind of mess around with. There's a sense that you can be together, or you can also have your own independent space. And I think it's very important. And it's one of the lessons that we've learned from having done just a sequencer with a bunch of people working on it is chaos that comes so quickly when there's too many things happening. And it really is the digitally, like, we market and talk about the digital equivalent of a studio. In real life, if you walk in on a jam session, it is chaos. It is the worst thing in the world. You can't hear anything. Everyone's doing their own stuff. It's a disaster, right? Like there needs to be a little bit of order in order for the to not go crazy, especially digitally. Everyone's got headphones on. It just becomes a mess and hard to think and hard to kind of work. So I think adding parts and having things kind of split into lanes is borrowing some concepts in gaming that just make the music experience better, and just helps you be in your own bubble if you need to be, and also to just make sure that if you leave, you just want to make sure that your stuff is still there. You can still do that as well too. I don't know how many times we've had the comments of people being like, "Oh, bro, I left, and I don't want anyone to delete my drums, bro." And like, how could you trust anyone in ranked mode? I remember seeing all those comments on the video before, and I'm also trying to show that, like, we listen. It's a valid point. If ever we want to allow the community, not just friends, to make music together, but the community, you need to have a way of protecting your assets as well too. Having them all in one spot, being able to lock them, helps.
I agree. So speaking of community, one thing that we've been requested a bunch is external VST support. So initially we focused on our own built-in plugins. Where did the switch come in to reintroduce external plugins?
I mean, you've talked old BC and new BC. Technically, the first thing we did was have external VSTs. Actually, it's an idea I'd floated around for a long time. It just feels like if we have the same thing, they should work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that idea has been there for a long time. It is technically very challenging to make this stuff work, and I think
Mm-hmm.
our first implementation of it just had a few too many. It was a little too wild west. It's exactly like everything else that we've done. We've kind of
Mm-hmm.
put it out there with no rules, discovered what had been working, not working, and now we can reapproach it and make it a better experience. For example, this time we're only going to allow VST3.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is that if we have the same plugin, it'll be in the same format, guaranteed, and it'll
Mm-hmm.
be guaranteed to work every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So sure, we shut the door on some of the older plugins, but at least you have an experience which is consistent, which works every time. We're also going to add a little marker inside of the collection to show you which plugins you have in common with your collaborator. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to make it a lot easier to kind of mess around and actually play with the feature. There's lots of little details and learnings from the first time that we did it that we're applying now that are just going to make it way more solid.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know every time, like I don't know how to skip that step. It's like every time you do something new, how are you supposed to know this stuff unless you actually try it and figure it out?
Mm-hmm.
It's like theory crafting in a game and then actually trying to build out. Like you don't really know. Like you think it's gonna be good, but then you try it out, you realize you missed like a specific thing. Same with product development.
Is there any specific technical benefit to using VST3 in a multiplayer setting, or is it just compatibility with your other users?
Well, I mean, there's companies whose like whole job it is like literally there's like 6 or 8 people and all they do is build EQs all day, every day. It's just an EQ. What is it? Monday EQ, Wednesday EQ, Friday. Guess what? EQ, and they do this for years.
And then
so
a pizza party.
In all likelihood, the EQ that you get from them is probably going to be pretty decent. They know their stuff. So the point is with external VSTs is while we can give you a starting brand that's decent and lets you get the point across and is fast, and there's a lot of benefits to the stuff that we've built since it's a different technology. There's still something to be said about taking something which is just super finely tuned, and that goes to EQs, it goes to reverbs, it goes to synthesizers. Like there are specialists who build really, really niche but incredible products that are useful for music, which is why that world is so popular. But to open it up and to have it to the community, have it to be able to, for example, take a drop and see how someone's used some of this stuff, I think is very, very helpful.
Can you imagine partnering with plugins in the future to make them accessible to everyone in BC?
We've bounced the idea many times, but I have a bone to pick, as you know, with the industry in general not moving forward and making things more complicated and more difficult. One of the nice things about all the work that we've done, and for example, our own marketplace, even the plugins you yourself have made that are there, like Hugo didn't even realize how easy it was to install that stuff. How you could just like click a couple buttons and it just shows up and it works. And of course it works in multiplayer, and of course it's easy to do. And of course I don't need to scan my plugins folder. And where did I put it? Is it in the commons file? Is it there? What does VST even stand for anyway? I don't know. It's just, and then the authentication stuff. Like there are so many hurdles that even experienced producers hate reinstalling plugins. It's just the worst thing, where you lose an authentication code because it's some bizarro system from like 2004.
Yeah, friggin' iLock. Yeah.
I'm playing with one of my hands right now. I found this recently, and Amin, bless his heart, helped me figure out the certification for this thing. It took us a year to make an AAX plugin, and he's scarred for life. And I don't use this thing anymore. But you see how it's got like a little hole right there? I was gonna add like I got this chain on.
Oh yeah,
I was gonna get another chain and turn it into
around.
a necklace.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's gonna be an iLock chain for Amin.
It's like protecting you from demons.
Protecting you from success.
Honestly,
Honestly, this stuff is just like so archaic that I want to work with external plugin manufacturers, or should I say, I want to work with audio programmers to get their concepts across.
Yeah.
But I don't want to dive into that world. I just don't. I think there's a better way, and I think anyone who makes music and gets a chance to experience a better way, as we evolve and mature, at some point, it's just a better way. Right? Is this not the same thing as like BlackBerry and iPhone? It's just like at some point, BlackBerry was really happy that they added a trackpad on like a thumb trackpad onto the keyboard thing, but then iPhone shows up with a touchscreen.
Yeah.
And then their own app marketplace, which is nicely integrated. Right? And they didn't, like, it took them forever to kind of get to that point, but I think if you're doing something in a better way, at some point the value just comes across.
Mm, mm, So speaking of plugins, you mentioned creation of plugins within BeatConnect and specifically the racks feature. So what makes you excited about the racks within BC?
I just geek out over it. You know, one of the reasons I love working on BeatConnect is because I did get obsessed with VSTs back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the idea that people can manipulate sound or MIDI and do kind of crazy things. I've always been kind of fascinated with it. Now, building plugins, I've done a couple now over the years. It is hard. It is very difficult. It's challenging. And people talk about the intimidation factor when they look at a synthesizer, and we joke about Knob City because it's just literally just a collection of an insane amount of Star Trek looking panels of knobs and sliders and things like that. But the truth is, if you actually pay attention to the little groupings of stuff, you see patterns emerge. A synth is going to have an oscillator that's going to feed into a filter, which is going to feed into an envelope, which might have a few things modulated. And if you group them this way, you could see that it's really just chains of not necessarily simple things, but logical things that are kind of put together, like Lego pieces that are kind of stacked together, And what I like about our plugin builder is that we've broken a plugin down, not down to the code level, but we can say to the component level, the same way a grouping of controls would be on a synthesizer, and allow you to kind of rearrange and swap them and get pretty deep in terms of manipulating it. All of that to say, I think we've reached a level of detail that allows you to really come up with some cool sounds and have fun with it and be creative without being exposed to code. I think we're about as close as we can get. And I know there are things like Max for Live, for example, which exist that people do like crazy things with. But I personally, even as a coder, I find it daunting and a little bit intimidating to kind of look at it. And I think we've struck a super nice balance of getting something which is usable and clear while still retaining some power and allowing people to express themselves and have fun with it. And I know for a fact that us ourselves using this product, we're still at like the 1% or 2% of usability of this thing. We can go deep. I haven't even had time to play with it enough. Bradley, I've seen, is a great example of someone who just threw into this for like, okay, all right, Harry, you used to be a wizard, but now you're a plugin designer. Go. And his first plugins were whatever. And then they started getting good. Then they became the stock plugins. And now the latest stuff he's done, it's actually really, really cool. Like he's done some great synths. He's done some awesome compressors that you could see his own evolution with the product. And he himself also says that he's not scratching the surface and he's getting kind of better at it. I think there's an untapped world of potential over here. And I find it so exciting. And not only that, but it's, as we were alluding to before, like, you could build one of these things. It's not just going to sit on your computer. You just hit a button and then you can share it with your friend, or it's in the community. That expression, that breaking a barrier between someone who's building a tool and someone who's using a tool is so powerful, and is such a problem with the music production world right now. And we've solved it. We've solved it by accident because we've done the MDAW, and that infrastructure happens to be good for this sort of thing. I think we have, I mean, it's intentional, but I don't even think we realize how good the thing is. Like I've only recently started showing it to the public. I've already had 4 messages in 24 hours between sound designers who want demos of this because they want to start looking to start building it. I think if we manage to spend a little bit of time polishing it, and again, adding, I don't even know if we need to add more flexibility, but there's a few things we have on the roadmap, like the LFO for it, for example, to make it really nice. This thing is a powerhouse. And it's not even just about creating plugins. It's about simplifying plugins, because you can use external stuff, right? Like imagine you take something like Serum that people struggle to understand, and you create a faceplate for it with a few simple macro knobs that's actually running Serum, and maybe even some of our own internal stuff. Like you could hide Frankensteins behind these faceplates and make incredible, incredible sounds. You can mix Serum with Omnisphere and make it easy to use. To me, that's wonderful. We're doing some awesome things, and this tech does exist. Like macro plugin stuff exists in FL, it exists elsewhere, but boy, they don't package it nicely. They don't make it easy to use, and they definitely don't make it easy to share. That's for sure. And that's where we can shine in a way that no one else can.
This is out of my own curiosity, but will the racks enable third-party plugin support?
Yes.
Oh,
they already do.
Oh, okay. So we could theoretically make a one knob Serum preset just for ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Now I know what I'm gonna do later.
Yeah, absolutely. It all works. Like I say, there's some really untapped potential in there,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is exciting. What's on my mind is, I've had audio programmers reach out to me that want to integrate their own plugins into there. How can we do that? How can we make
Mm.
it easy for someone to add a new component? And then how can we make it easy to add new kinds of visual components to this as well too? Does it have to be limited to, um, sliders and knobs?
Mm.
Because this is integrated with BC, this could also affect tracks. It could affect other things inside of the DAW. There's a way to integrate this to make it even more powerful. Like it's wild. It's really wild, and it's untapped, which is always a source of inspiration for me.
Mm. So these plugins, they obviously are available as assets on our marketplace. What are your thoughts about the marketplace right now, and the advantages it provides for an average user over other alternatives?
Oh man, I think we've done a pretty good job, honestly. I think we're not overpricing things. I think plugins are fun. Okay, it is always cool to get a new toy that you can play that makes sounds that can potentially enhance your music. It's why there's so many hoarders and collectors of plugins. It's just always fun to try a shiny new toy that makes sounds and to integrate it. Like it just is. But then you look at the installation process, and more importantly, you look at the price: $40 for a reverb, $80
Mm-hmm.
for a compressor. You don't know whether it's good or not good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have the ability, and this will be coming soon, to try a plugin even with your own stuff before you buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Our plugins cost $1 to
Mm-hmm.
$3. Like our most expensive thing is $3. I mean, so reasonably priced. They're so easy to install. They're expandable. You can update them. They are natively working in multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
Once we enable the rack, I would love also the ability to allow people to explode a plugin so that you can actually tinker with
Mm.
it inside of the rack and maybe make your own variant. It's like the difference between Android and iPhone a little bit at that
Mm.
sense as well too. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
we'll give it to you, but here's all the ways it works, and if you want to modify it for your own needs and make something even better out of it, please be my guest. It
Mm.
really is. I think our marketplace is a reflection of our values,
Mm.
definitely, and everything that we kind of are trying to do. And I think it's fun. Like we're not overwhelming you with, like, I hate those websites that look like coupons
Yeah. Yeah.
for like the grocery store or like a used car
Mm.
ad sale thing. It's just terrible how something is $800, but now it's 90% off, so you can get
Yeah.
it for
Yeah.
only $80. It's such a
Yeah.
joke, and
Yeah.
like it's nerds who don't know what they're doing,
Yeah.
just doing whatever, and
Mm.
it's bad practice, and I don't like it.
It's
So
like Bauer. They're always on sale. I don't get it. It's like you can't always be on sale. Anyways,
ridiculous.
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
I would lower it even more. I also want to, mobile gaming has its fair share of like terrible things going
Mhm.
on. But the fact that you can get rewards for just using the game, I
Yeah.
think that's fair. Like if
Yeah.
you use
Yeah.
BC, I am more than happy to give you more plugins and more sounds and stuff like that. So I
Mhm.
would love to incorporate that as well too. So that, even if you don't want to spend $10 on the marketplace, you could still have fun. Plus,
Yeah.
we have plenty of free assets
Yeah.
play with as well too.
And
So
you don't
I
need to
honestly,
try and install it. You don't need to try and go through that whole thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just, if you get a new computer, you just log into your account and it all just installs automatically as well
Yeah.
too, which is so nice.
Yeah.
I think it's a reflection of our values. Like the business model of any company is a reflection of who they are and what they believe in.
Mhm.
And you know as well as I do, there's like 20 of us here. This isn't free. Like this is not
Mm.
free. We don't charge anyone to use the software, to download it, to use our servers. You can optionally choose to enhance your experience by spending $1 to $3 on really cool new
Mm.
assets that are handcrafted, that we spent a lot of time building, that the
Mhm.
community, even like from the beat battles, have participated in and helped us building
Mhm.
as well too.
Mhm.
Like, what is more fair than that?
Mhm.
Honestly,
I like the word.
I don't know if it's sustainable, but it's fair. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I like the word handcrafted. Like Brad's out there with clay and like creating a plugin.
I have
Yeah.
seen, okay, like you say that, but I've seen your guys' process for creating these things. You got an art director who I've never met. You've got Figma files. You've come up with your own innovation with templates, with blurs and stuff like
Mm.
that. Like it is a team of people who put these
Mm.
things together. As much as we joke about this thing being easy, you
Mhm.
guys have done some serious work to make sure that it's at least quality that comes out. Then the
Mm.
QA process around the whole thing, both in staging and in prod, on the functionality of it, on the tweaking of it to make sure that the macros are nice, and then the performance of the plugins to
Mm.
make sure we're not over abusing certain things. A lot goes into these,
Mm.
and you're under estimating or not even thinking about your own work that goes into this. It's a lot.
So accessing all of these assets in my collection, how do you look at my collection as being different to compared to just like opening your folder on your computer and dragging stuff in?
I mean, it's sort of the same, but it's sort of not. I mean, I don't know how much innovation we're necessarily bringing to this particular place, but I do think it's important that you have one spot to access everything that you need to make music and to have it be handy. We've spent a lot of time, and as you know, to make sure that it's nicely organized, it's easy to find your things. We have obviously plans to make it have a nice multimodal search added to it. We have nice filters. It's easy to drag things in and out. You could still add your custom folders in there as well too. Your custom VSTs are showing up in there. All your saved kits are there as well too. I think that we can take it even further though. I think that anytime you make a piece of music, even if it's just a sample or it's an effect chain that you put together, it would be nice to be able to just like drag that into your collection and to snap it in there, future reference. I think that all the time, sometimes, like when I'm making music in what I used to make music, because now I'm too busy fixing bugs that you report. But before you took away my joy of making music, sometimes I wouldn't finish a song. I would just like come up with a kit, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this drum kit, but I kind of want it. And it's not just about the plugin. It's maybe I've added some effects on it, and I came up with kind of some cool patterns that kind of go along with it. I kind of want to save that whole kit caboodle so that I can pull it up next time. Sometimes it's just an effects chain I thought I've just nailed really well that's good for vocals that I want to save, or a collection of tracks. I think anything you see or think of that you're happy with, you should be able to just like snap it into your collection. And then, of course, eventually share it with your friends, share it with the community, but at least having it in your collection so you can use it later on, so that anytime you sit down to make music, even if it's for 5 minutes, you can get something usable out of it. Like, there's some power there. So I think the collection, it has a roadmap for sure, and there's ways we can make it more useful.
All right. Last thing to chat about is drops. How do you imagine users using drops and sort of how it can benefit their workflow?
Yeah. Okay, so there's a few things to talk about here. Drops, of course, being the ability to kind of publish projects and let other people remix them and people can like them. I love the system of drops. I think that there's a lot of ways we can package it to get some more use out of it. For example, one of the things that we were talking about is some of the own drops that we've created. They're often kind of starter kits, right? Like I've seen trap starter kits. I've seen melodies that Prince in particular has put together that are really good starting spots for songs. One of the things we will be doing short term is packaging some of these drops as project templates, so that when you go to start a new project, instead of, we could say, hey, do you want to start from scratch, or do you want to pick one of our Kickstarters? Like that's awesome and has a lot of power. I love the ability to share projects and to add things. We talk about the fun of BeatConnect, and even that power user who we were speaking to, he alluded to that, he makes music a lot. You've mentioned that he's a great Ableton user and a great musician and producer. He said he likes drops because he could just add something. It's quick, it's easy. He doesn't always have a lot of time or brain power left over from all of his other endeavors to make music, but he could just do something and participate and feel satisfied. That feels like part of the mission statement of BeatConnect, and Drops solves it so elegantly and nicely. And as we evolve and move forward, boy, there's so much fun we can have. Like we saw with the beat battles, people love competing. People love being able to have a starting point for their own inspiration for making music. Such a nice way of solving that with our system that's elegant and less manual than before. I love the idea of leaderboards. I love the idea of challenges. I love the idea of making it like a roguelike. There's so many ways that we can use it as a way for people to get inspired to make music. And I think ultimately that's what it's about. So yeah, it's an awesome feature. But in order for that to work really nicely, you have to make sure that, people can time stretch their samples nicely. You have to make sure that, all the other little things that we've talked about before can be kind of taken care of. So I see it, and I'm glad it's out there, and I'm glad people can see the potential. But I think we need to remain focused on basics so that people can have as much fun as possible with drops.
So, yeah, you chatted a lot about really interesting stuff and what we have now and what's coming up in the short term. Is there anything that you're particularly excited about with the future of BeatConnect, whether it's 10 years from now or just being able to fix up time stretching What sort of what makes you excited?
I guess I mean, it's been 4.5 years now of like some pretty intense grind on
Mm-hmm.
this. Like we talked about how Monday it's EQ, Wednesday it's EQ, Friday it's EQ. For me, it's BC,
Mm-hmm.
including weekends, including
Mm-hmm.
vacation, including
Mm-hmm.
Christmas Day. It has
Mm-hmm.
been a lot, a lot, a lot of work to get here. And I think we have a diamond in the rough.
Mm-hmm.
From what I can see, my overall gut feeling is that we've built something great, but not all the pieces talk to each other properly
Mm-hmm.
yet. They still need some finessing, and we still need to do the grunt work of just making it work better, more stable, which is just engineering and time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is exciting to me is to see all of that come together, because every now and then you get a glimpse of it and you hear about it from someone, or you see it kind of come into action. And to see that potential really realized and come together, I feel like we're close.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about the new features. It's really is, you know, taking the stuff that we have, making it work nicely together, just cleaning up the flows a little bit. And I think this thing is gonna absolutely explode. But I do remember the first time that you tested the old Juice version
Yeah.
of BC. I remember watching footage of you try to capture feature,
The
of
capture
messing
feature.
around, and it made me excited because I was like, who is this kid? And I'm like, what? Almost 2 million streams on Spotify. What? Timbaland's heard his beats. I'm like, honestly, musically, you've accomplished more than I've accomplished musically. And I was like, that's great. And to see you have fun with it and to tinker with it and to
Mm-hmm.
explore with it. And then to finally, like we really work together now. I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, that's awesome, man.
I was one of the I drank the Kool-Aid, I was just like, yeah, this is really cool, and I hopped on. So if I'm willing to quit my other job and join BC for this, I'm sure people are willing to just leave Ableton for a bit and come to BC.
Just to have some fun. It's the
Yeah.
whole point. I some people play Baldur's Gate and then they go lose some ARAMs in League afterwards with their
Oh
friends.
God.
I think I mean, you're allowed to use more than one product. It's
Yeah.
okay. I mean,
Yeah. It's
every
very
I'm
true.
not I'm never gonna bash on any of the incredible software that's kind of out there. And if you meet the people behind it too, like crazy audio engineers and
Mm-hmm.
musicians and brilliant minds are behind this. We just want to learn from the lessons that they've kind of gone through and just
Mm-hmm.
carve our own path and kind of have our own fun with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, definitely appreciate having you around.
Yeah.
More good times to come, and hopefully the fruition of our work soon.